Welcome to the Our Ability podcast. My name is John Robinson. I'm president and CEO of Our Ability, and we're proud to be back in the podcast this fall 2024. We're going to talk about ableism in America. In the spring of 2024, we talked with some of our corporate partners on ableism, employment, opportunity for individuals with disabilities, and we're proud of those relationships. But as we join the political season here in September of 2024 with an election in early November, ableism pops its ugly head again and again, and it's something that I want to address. I wrote a blog in April of 2018 called The Ignorant President. And even though that was over 6 years ago, the blog is the number one post we've ever had on Our Ability. The conversation in the blog was something that I was thinking about at the time about individuals with disabilities and what could we do better. I talked about Donald Trump. I talked about his mocking individuals with disabilities. I talked about how it was relatively silent in the media. And it was true at the time. We started to get a feeling of ableism in politics through a president of the United States that didn't care about individuals with disabilities. And yet, we're more and more prevalent. And the fact that it's the number one post on ourability.com tells me that we are opposed, that there are two sides to this equation. In disability, I'm not talking about Republican or Democrat. We've got more authoritarian nature. We've got people that are thinking less and less about diversity, equity, inclusion. We've got a more closed-minded nature to people who are different. And yet the number one post on our blog is my thoughts on, at that time, the president disparaging individuals with disabilities. That to me means that we're going in two different directions. But it also means that there is going to be an outcome that may or may not be great. That we're not going to get better with this unless we start listening to each other. And that's what I'm thinking about today. Ableism itself is hurtful words or actions, intentional or unintentional, towards individuals with disabilities. We deal with ableism every day with our company, with Our Ability. We use ableism. We use technology to limit ableism in written language because we understand whether it's intentional or not, there's ableism in written language, but there's also ableism in deed. There's ableism in the words that you speak, a la the Ignorant President blog post. There's ableism whether you hire individuals with disabilities or you ignore individuals with disabilities in your hiring practices or in your sales approach if you're a business. There's ableism in how we educate individuals with disabilities. I live in New York State, and we're doing a really good job with individuals with disabilities in this state. We have a chief disability office. We have a chief disability officer. We're including disability more and more ever with this governor's administration. And yet, we have a federal election that is coming ahead, and ableism is at the forefront. What do I mean? Well, that 2018 post about the ignorant president was talking about Donald Trump mocking reporters with disabilities. Here we are in 2024, and Fred Trump, his nephew, comes out in a book called All in the Family, The Trumps and How We Got This Way, and describes Trump talking about Fred Trump's child with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And according to the book, according to Fred Trump, Donald Trump openly suggested, wouldn't it be better if your son were not here? Dead. Listen, as an individual with a disability myself, I understand fully how lucky I am. I really do. Donald Trump said to Fred Trump, it's about the cost of care. The cost of care. That's a dangerous comment. If you look back in history, in the early 1930s, late 1920s in Germany, people with disabilities were treated very well, were part of society. Then, as Nazism took hold in the mid 30s, individuals with disabilities started getting more and more institutionalized. As they got more and more institutionalized in the mid 30s, as nationalism took hold in Germany, it became more of the norm. Then in the late 30s, as those institutional beds increased of individuals with disabilities and there was less inclusion in society, as Germany went to war in Europe, those beds were needed and the extermination process began. It started with individuals with disabilities. Because of the cost of creating more beds for returning soldiers when they had beds right there for those that were deemed less. The very definition of ableism. So when presidential candidate here in 2024, Donald Trump, talks in the past about the cost of a child with a disability, you have to think it's at the forefront of that presidential candidate's mind. You also have to think it's at the forefront of a lot of our minds. That's the reason The Ignorant President is the #1 blog post on our ability. We've been up for 13 years. I've hand cycled across New York State 8 times. Those blog posts have a lot of hits. We've done a lot of great things. We've produced video stories on how businesses can talk to individuals with disabilities in a better, more informative way. Those stories have done very well on our ability. We have a jobs board with over 15,000 people a month coming to our website. Those pages do very well. But the #1 blog post, The Ignorant President. That's the very definition of ableism. Somebody's less, the cost is more. Wouldn't it be better if? We've got to be very careful. On the other side, we have a candidate which is very exciting, very vibrant, ready to go. Recently had a Zoom call with individuals with disabilities for Kamala Harris. Wonderful. Fantastic. But if you noticed, Kamala Harris didn't talk about disability in her acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention. Like many Democratic candidates before, didn't mention disability. On that very Zoom call, they thought, boy, this is going to be great. Again, like a lot of Democratic politicians take people with disabilities for granted. That Zoom call then turned pretty quickly. Where's the policy? Where's the policy? See, Governor Hochul in New York State's gotten it right in that we're doing more and more for individuals with disabilities through policy. Could there be better? Absolutely. Could we create more pay for caregivers of individuals with disabilities? We absolutely should. Could we eliminate subminimum wage in New York State, where there's still 1,500 plus individuals with disabilities making subminimum wage? Absolutely. Can we do more? Absolutely. But are we having those conversations? Yes, we are. Presidential candidate Kamala Harris can do more and should do more. And it is having those difficult Zoom calls where they don't go perfectly. Because truthfully, disability and ableism do not go well. There are hard conversations to have. How do we pay for? What is the value? How do we create employment? How do we create entrepreneurship? This is what our ability does. But the answer can't be the cost is too much, and so death is preferable. It can't be. So we've got that going on one side, which is fairly negative. Then we've got the other side. We have just come out of the Paralympics again. The Paralympics changed our abilities trajectory. In 2012, we went to the Paralympic Games as media, and we realized the growth of inclusion of disability had huge opportunity. We saw it in London. We saw it a little bit in Tokyo. We definitely have seen it in Paris. Just some statistics quickly. On Peacock and USA, the NBC channels here in the United States, viewership for the Paralympics in the United States was up 125%. The viewership in the Paralympics in the UK on Channel 4 doubled. That means to me that there's more people with disabilities, there's more interest in people with disabilities, there's more opportunity for people with disabilities in general society. Where's the ableism? In our politics and policy. If you watch the financial channels, I happen to watch Bloomberg and CNBC. I do that because since the beginning of COVID, if you follow the money, you see where we're going. There's been a very problematic turn. DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, have turned out to be a negative thing based on what corporate America is saying. And that is coming out of the conversations of Comcast through CNBC, to some extent Bloomberg, certainly News Corp and Murdoch with Fox Business, and to a lesser extent in the United Kingdom. We're seeing more negative conversation around DE&I. And it's always been difficult to get disability as part of DE&I anyway. And so we become less and less. We need to be aware of those pivots. We need to also realize that if the viewership is up, if the interest is up, if the ignorant president blog post is up, if people with disabilities coming to our website looking for jobs is up, that there is more of us that want to be included, and that this is the time to bring those items together. If we continue to separate, if our policies go away from individuals with disabilities, and yet our numbers increase and our voice increase, there's going to be a massive reckoning. And the danger is what happens in Germany in 1930s, that because the voices are up, that the best way to deal with it is to limit services, limit support, limit opportunity, and create more institutionalization. And by vilifying individuals with disabilities, we actually end up creating less opportunity. We're in a world right now where immigration is bad. You're seeing it right now today, September 10th, 2024. Germany is closing immigration borders. They're doing it again. The United States is talking about less immigration. We're doing it as well. So if we're bringing less people in and we're vilifying the most marginalized populations, we will not be able to grow our economy. We will not be able to grow our society. We will end up creating a more nationalistic country. And while that's on a human level awful, it's also awful on an economic level. You cannot grow your economy with less people. There's no way. The only people that will make more money in a society with less people are the very rich. That's what we don't talk about. That's what CNBC doesn't talk about. That's what Fox Business doesn't talk about. You cannot grow your economic middle class if you have less people. You will only grow more wealth for the wealthy. So when Donald Trump tells Fred Trump that the cost is too much, what's really happening is he's protecting his personal wealth, but also the personal wealth of the very richest. The Jeff Bezoses, the Elon Musks of the world. That's what he's doing. And we need a Kamala Harris. We need those to speak up for individuals with disabilities, to listen to the hard conversation, to get some pushback, yes, not to ignore, but to open up opportunities, to open up the middle class, and have that middle class include individuals with disabilities. The numbers support it. The blog posts are up, viewership is up, conversation is up. We just need America to listen to that.